Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Pat.
You very well? You good? You with me?
I am well. Always lovely to hang out with you, my friend.
You
I'm
a little.
liking how your background has changed since we last caught up. I like that
Oh,
rustic wood look.
what was I doing last time? Was I up in my bedroom last time?
Yeah, you're in your bedroom and you had like changing neon light behind you.
Oh, the porn star lights above my bed. That
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Whereas I'm going for the he's a brain box look with
yeah.
my
Well, that's what
background.
that's what we've got. Yeah, I was also looking there. My little name there, right, and your
Yeah.
little name by yours. It just says Frank. It doesn't say Reverend Frank. So I probably should do a proper introduction. Media chaplain, Reverend Francis Ritchie. And as you say, brain box around all things religion. Is that a fair introduction?
Oh, yeah, probably. I mean, Fia, I don't know if I'm so much of a brain box. I like to give the impression that I am, and then I just talk and see what happens.
Yeah. Um, I like talking about Easter, and that's why we've got you on. It's the appropriate time to talk about Easter. Um, I remember, as I'm saying that, I remember hearing a story from Stephen Merchant, comedian and co-creator of The Office, talking about how he apparently had quite a religious sister, and he was an atheist, and they were arguing when they got together for it was probably Christmas about religion, and his mother went, "Oh, look, this is not the time nor the place to argue about religion." And he was like, "Hang on, this is exactly the time and the place because it's a religious holiday." So I kind of feel like it's exactly the time and the place that we should be talking about Easter because tomorrow is an Easter holiday. So that's why we're
Mm.
talking about it.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a time when I get my most requests, for comment as well. So, yeah, I think most people are onto that trip, that if you're gonna talk about it, now is the time.
because it's different from Christmas, eh? And obviously, I don't want people to go, "Oh, yeah, of course it is." But what I'm saying is, Christmas is steeped in religion, i.e., within this Western culture, the celebration of Christmas is a Christian origin story that then has flowed into Frosty and Santa and other things as well. But this one is different. It feels different, and it is different because whilst it's got those same historical context for a Western world, um, I reckon if you lined up 100 people and asked them about the origin story or what of Christmas, many of them would say the baby in the manger. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. I think far fewer would say this dude Jesus and died on the cross and that kind of stuff for Easter. In my opinion, I mean, I guess you're steeped in this stuff and work around this stuff. Would you assess the same?
Yeah, it's because of my world, it's really hard to know how
Yeah,
much the average person, who doesn't consider themselves Christian, hasn't grown up around church, how much they actually know about this time of year. But I mean, I have a sense that this time of year is very different. It comes whilst there's still commercialism there, it comes with less commercial traps than Christmas does. It doesn't come with our end of year wind up and our planning of
yeah,
our summer holidays in Aotearoa. And I think there's a sense of somberness around it that doesn't come with Christmas because we're dealing with the death of Jesus. And a lot of people probably know the crucifixion element, might not necessarily know the resurrection element because that's slightly more awkward to talk about.
to package in an egg form. Um, I was thinking about also how the culture thinks of Easter. And I made a thumbnail for yesterday's episode. So let me show you the thumbnail. This is for the episode we're doing right now. You may or may not have seen the thumbnail, but the thumbnail looks like this, right? It's for today's episode. So these are the things we're going to talk about today. And obviously, there's this picture here of old JC on the cross. So I went to Google Images or whatever it was, Bing Images, and went and I just typed the word Easter. That was it. That was all I typed looking for it. And here's an example of I did it again this morning. It's not quite the same because I did it on my laptop upstairs, and obviously there's different caching and that kind of stuff. When I did it upstairs, I had to scroll through about 9
Mm.
pages before I got to anything to do with a religious holiday. And as I was doing that, I kind of went, "Oh, that's really interesting." It's not quite the same today. It's a different search in a different computer, but you can still see going through all of these. Like there's one there, right? But
Yeah.
then actually, there's very little. I mean, Easter Island is in there quite a lot, but not that Easter story. Even Trump gets a mention, and Pence gets a mention on the Easter search. But you can see, I mean, look, there's another one there, but that's actually people might also be looking for the actual Easter search, and I guess that kind of speaks to me a little bit of, I mean, let's be honest, it'll be steeped in American bias, this because that's where a lot of these images and stuff come from, but it doesn't seem to be relevant, let's say to your average person when they're thinking about Easter, I think that would be echoed in mostly when you do a search for an image, you get the most popular that pop to the top, and old JC's not up there.
Mm.
I
Are you
just thought
able
that
to
was an
do that?
interesting observation.
Are you able to do that search live, just out of interest? Because I'd like you to look
Yeah.
up how the way that most of the world actually refers to this time of year, because it's only English-speaking countries that call it Easter.
Okay.
So I want you to look up Pascha,
Yeah.
Pascha, and let's see what images come out when you look that up.
Okay. And we go to images. Lots of food. There's
Yeah.
more. There's actually eggs there. Lots of food.
But one of the first is the Eastern Orthodox icon of the resurrection.
Oh, here is
Uh,
it? This.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So
One
different
there.
imagery.
Shirts there. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
yeah. Much more.
most of the world calls it Pascha. It's
Really?
just coming out of Old English, dating back hundreds and hundreds of years. We call it Easter, rolling off Bede, who was a missionary in
Great.
England in like 700 odd AD, referring to the month that they were celebrating Pascha in. And he posited the idea. He's the only one that's ever written about it, that month might have been named after an old fertility goddess named Ilsta. And so therefore we get, in English speaking countries, we get Easter, and we get that confusion around the fact that we might be just following some pagan tradition. Most of the world calls it Pascha, and then you get a very different look as to what that is.
When you say most of the world, I mean, I think English is the second largest. I think Mandarin might be the
True.
largest language, and then English might be the second largest. But you say most of the world, that would imply to me at least the second largest language, English, would call it Easter. I mean, there's not English speaking countries that call it Pascha, are there? Or are you saying they do?
Throughout, well, there's a lot of countries that speak English as a second language. So
Yeah.
you've got your Commonwealth countries that would refer to it as Easter, but outside of that, so in much of Europe and Russia,
Oh, okay.
it would be called something along the lines of Pascha or some variation of that, and therefore a familiarity with the story of this time of year is a whole lot higher because it hasn't
Yeah.
been muddied with these other stories and these other ideas.
That's really interesting. I never knew that. So are you saying in all other uh, countries that aren't dominant in English, like whether it's France or Belgium or Germany or Russia or Japan, or it's more likely to be Pascha?
Yeah, I think with probably the exception in that list of Germany, who I think name it after a fertility goddess that they celebrate as well. Ostra, I think her name is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think Germany would be the exception there. But outside of Germany, it would have some name that links it more closely to Passover, since that's what we're most connected to in the Jewish calendar.
Wow. Well, there you go. The books behind you have served themselves well today, because it's brand new information, and that's brand. Like, I grew up in the Catholic Church, right? So I have had this story around me since I literally couldn't talk, and I've
Yeah,
never heard that explanation before. So that's
and I
something that's
actually
interesting. Yeah.
I actually think the church would do itself a great service if in English speaking countries now, thinking about secular New Zealand, if we moved more and more to using that term Pascha, just to highlight the difference and to somewhat separate it from some of the mythology around some of the other things that people think it's connected to when it isn't. I think using Pascha would connect it more clearly to the Jewish Passover.
Right. The celebration, although that's a strange word to think about someone being kind of put to death, but the celebration of Easter for the Christian world is, I'm going to say, it's obvious. As I said, grew up in the Catholic Church, so I understand, the celebration of it, which is this figurehead of your religion, kind of did his biggest deed. Sort of the reason he was here. That was about Easter. I'm paraphrasing very poorly, and you can put it in your words if you want. But I'm also wondering about Easter for the non-religious. Like, I
Mm.
think it's quite easy to attach Christmas to the non-religious, because, like you're saying, there's family, there's summer holidays in New Zealand, there's the end of your work year, there's recuperation from a busy. There's lots of things you can attach to it. And I remember a friend of mine talking about, what better than to sell it, like talking about this kind of idea about it's a religious holiday. And a friend of both of ours, said to me once, imagine if this figurehead, this god character, what better would he want than a whole group of people having a big party at the end of the year and getting back with their families? That'll be a great thing. I'm trying to relate that to Easter and the non-religious, other than a few days off work. What's in it for them? What can they get from it or from the story, do you think?
Yeah, there's a whole lot of reflective elements in there. So even if you don't believe the story, those reflective elements are involve suffering. They involve loss of hope, a sense that things are really dark. When I think about, particularly, you've got Jesus on the cross and his sense of abandonment. My God, why have you forsaken me? Are words that he says when he's on the cross, mirroring a really old psalm, a really old poem that was core to their DNA and the prayers that he would have been praying. So and then you've got the disciples, their hopes, their dreams, and their expectations about who Jesus was and what they thought he was going to achieve. And then when you think about the crucifixion, then what we call Easter Saturday, that time after all their hopes and their dreams, their expectations have come crashing down. So there's this sense in the Christian story that God dives into the middle of that with humanity, that he enters into that darkness. But there's an acknowledgement of suffering there. Christmas doesn't have that acknowledgement. And in the middle of a pandemic, I think something like the acknowledgement of human suffering is really relevant. And we're not a culture that does great at allowing room for suffering and allowing it to breathe. We kind of want to hush it away. We want to silence it. We want to make it better as quickly as we possibly can. Whereas what we call the Easter story allows room for that. And it says that's part of the human experience. It's within the human DNA to a degree to suffer. And so we have that there in the story. What the slightly uncomfortable story of the resurrection does, which is what most secular people would reject, is it says that God is interested in life in the midst of suffering, that even when things seem really hopeless, even when things seem really dark, there's always a way back. As long as we're breathing, there is a way forward. And it causes us to check our expectations. And the beauty of the resurrection is it says that life can be better than what we had hoped for. So that story through darkness and through suffering into life and into light, I think, is relevant for everybody. And the story gives us a chance, whether you believe it or not, to reflect on that. In the Northern Hemisphere, of course, and this is where people marry all these things together as well, it sits in springtime. So you get that darkness to light going on in a way that we don't in the natural world here in the Southern Hemisphere.
No, and as it gets darker and darker here in Dunedin, I'm feeling your pain. Hey, Frank, it's been great to talk to you today. I thank you for bringing a bit of context to it. I do often think about, we do have holidays in New Zealand, and we know exactly why and where they've come from, whether it be Anzac Day, whether it be Waitangi Day, or whether it be fucking Labor Day. We have these days that we go, this is why it's here, and this is why. Doesn't mean you have to agree with, Waitangi Day or Labor Day or Queen's birthday if you're not someone who's into the monarch. But it seems that this, and probably Christmas as well, but more so, this is the one that people just literally think of it as a day off work for a day off work. And as you said, whether they agree or believe with the story that's being told, I think it's important for people to know why the story is there and why the days are being had off, even if it's not part of their calendar or our calendar in a modern New Zealand. There's a historical context as to why these days are here, and I just wanted to share that a bit today, I guess.
Yeah. Can I just add one more point to
Sure.
that? I think too, it's this story more than the Christmas story that has fed into some of the values that we hold as dear in Western society that has been influenced by Christianity. Obviously, some of that influence has been bad. I'll own that straight up. But some of the ways that this story has influenced us in really good ways is our understandings of humility, of self-sacrifice, of the ideas of our leaders needing to be people who serve first and foremost. And this comes with this time of year comes with the story of Jesus washing his disciples' feet. There's an element where we expect that sort of humility, or we want it from our leaders, and they do their best to show that they embody that, whether they do or not. So there's a chance here to celebrate some key values about who we are as well, and to remind ourselves about the values of things like humility and service.
Excellent. Reverend Frank, do you still go by Francis? I know I ask you this every time, but have you gone back to when when you became a reverend to start off with, I think you were trying to be a bit more formal with the Francis. Have you officially dropped that yet? Are you Reverend Frank Ritchie now, or do you go back to Francis? How am I saying goodbye to you today, Frank?
Oh, because of the radio years, mate. Frank Ritchie just stuck. But I do like Francis. I mean, named after a great saint who embodied humility and service. So I'll happily go with either. Stage name is Frank, but intimately Francis.
Yeah, I don't know how intimate we're going to be this morning, but there you go. I also was going to say, and I didn't say it at the point, Bede is my middle name, so I'm
Ah, very
intimate.
good. Well, this
Yeah,
this time of year is perfect for you then. He's part of the reason everybody gets confused about the whole fertility goddess thing.
yeah, because he was a bit of a dog. No, I was just kidding. What we're joking
No.
about. Hey, Frank Ritchie, Reverend Francis Ritchie, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your perspective, and have an amazing Easter.
Thanks, Pat.